Hello, viewers. I'm Raja Faisal from Islamabad once again with you with my exclusive interviews as always. Today's interview would be parted in three. In the first part, we would be talking about the past of Research and Analysis Wing, in short, RAW, which is the premier intelligence agency of neighboring India, and its presence in Afghanistan. First of all, in the part one, we will be talking about the past of it, how they've been carrying out their missions, or rather, I should say, clandestine missions in Afghanistan and Pakistan. And then in the part two, we will be discussing what is going on now. And in the third part, of course, the future, looking upon the Afghan peace deal. To discuss all this with me, I have Major Retired Adil Raja. He is a geopolitical analyst. He has a grip on international relations. He knows what is going on in the region. Plus, he is an expert on counterinsurgency as well. So there will be a lot to talk about it. Sir, thank you very much for joining me.
Raja Faisal, always a pleasure to be on your program.
So first of all, my first question is, how do you see whatever happened in the past, looking at the fact that Indians, they have been, always boasting about their presence in Afghanistan just to counter Pakistan and just to keep Pakistan busy on the Western Front as well.
Raisa, before we proceed about the entire issue, about the first part, we need to look at the background of the entire issue. We need to understand the stakes India have in Afghanistan, to understand the presence of their intelligence agency and its operations in Afghanistan, which are mainly directed at Pakistan, against Pakistan. You see, we should go back to 1947, in fact, where Afghan Kabail, the tribesmen of Afghanistan, the Pathan tribesmen, took part in the independence of Kashmir under, of course, the guidance and direction of Pakistan Army. So it has got a historical background, the entire Afghan tribal saga in Kashmir. And it links Kashmir with Afghanistan and Pakistan and, of course, India. You see, in the 1980s, once Pakistan successfully concluded the Cold War while being part of the American camp, the Afghan Mujahideen, or as they were now called, the Afghan Taliban, they became active in the Kashmir theater. Now, these are known facts that Pakistan did supported the Kashmir freedom struggle, and the Afghan Mujahideen were a major part of the Kashmir freedom struggle. In 2006, Pakistan took a policy U-turn under General Pervez Musharraf, and Pakistan stopped sending in the Afghan Mujahideen, the Taliban, into Kashmir. Now, this provided an opportunity to India to employ these international ideological mercenaries, as I would like to call them always, to employ them from Afghanistan. And this was actually acknowledged publicly by Indian National Security Advisor, Mr. Ajit Doval, while he was addressing the university students, that what has been Afghanistan doing, or what has been Pakistan doing to us, we should do the same, just double the money and do the same to them, give them a taste of their own medicine. So they embarked upon that journey, and that is where the infrastructure of RAW really took hold in Afghanistan. So they established these cultural centers in Afghanistan, and from those cultural centers, the so-called cultural centers, they hired they created, in fact, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. And the TTP waged a war against the Pakistani state. And Indians very successfully gave Pakistan the taste of our own medicine. Now, we've been warning them time and again to stop with the subversive activities, since Pakistan is no more actively supporting the Kashmir insurgency at the magnitude the way it was before. I mean, we were openly doing it as a policy, but it's no more our policy, and we want to solve the issues sitting on table, sitting through diplomatic channels. That is now a policy directive of Pakistan. So you see, there is a background. There is a background of raw. There is a background. This is the background because of which India is sitting there in Afghanistan. And now talking about the Indian stakes in Afghanistan security. So yes, let us acknowledge in a pragmatic manner, we must acknowledge that Indians have got stakes in Afghanistan because the security in India and the security interest of India are related to Afghanistan, because keeping in view the past background which I've just given you. So this is the background in which Indian operations, the raw operations in Afghanistan, are established there. And you see, after 9/11, once the US-led coalition attacked Afghanistan and they toppled the Taliban government, India got an official cover to go and sit there. And I've got personal experience in this regard while I was there at Torkham and while I was there at the Pakistan-Afghanistan border as part of the Pakistani security forces. I was commanding a wing. So we used to get these reports quite regularly that the Indian raw agents are sitting in the US camps, the International Security Assistance Force camps, and they were operating from there. Those were their forward bases. So since we had already exposed their cultural centers and we were taking countermeasures for them not to operate from there, they moved their bases to within the confines of the International Security Assistance Force, within the confines of the NATO forces, and they were sitting right inside their military bases. And they were operating from there, and we used to tell them there were used to be tripartite commission meetings. We will go to Afghanistan, they'll come to Pakistan, and we will tell them that, see, you are letting the raw operative work while sitting in your camps. In fact, once I was there at Shiraz camp, I still remember my dear friend, we are still on good terms, Colonel Sean Seibert. I told him this for the 10th time. You see, the camp where I'm sitting, you've got raw operatives sitting here working against the interest of my country, then how can you expect me to cooperate with you? How can you expect my country to cooperate with you? And his answer, as always, was that, you see, we can't really control our spooks. That's what they used to call the CIA agent. And it's obvious that US-India strategic partnership has got this angle, which has given this leverage to research and analysis wing to use their bases against us. But that is soon going to end, you see. And that is what we have to discuss, that what will be the future of this relationship in the light of the US and Taliban peace accord sponsored by Pakistan.
Now, I just wanted to ask you about to what extent CIA and RAW they were cooperating each other just to disrupt peace of the western border of Pakistan. As we already know, I mean, you will agree with this that conventionally and traditionally, Pakistan's army's focus has always been on the eastern front. Reason being, we have always been, fighting wars against the Indians. Then comes 9/11, and post 9/11 scenario, it was quite different because at once we saw CIA coming into, operating in Afghanistan, and then suddenly we started seeing RAW being there, and you know to some extent it's been said that Mossad was present in there as well. So all of these unholy alliances, they were against Pakistan, and it is said that the alliances, these sort of alliances, they were just to keep Pakistan busy on the Western front, and sort of like Pakistan's attention from the Eastern front, it can be shifted towards the Western front so that Pakistan gets fragile internally, but it didn't happen. The biggest reason is that Pakistan has been countering very well. And the point you highlighted earlier, that you talked with the officer, the American Army's officer, and he pointed out as well that there are certain things they can't, look into. At the same time, we've been, asked by CIA and American government that Pakistan needs to do more. Whenever they said it needs to do more, of course, we knew that they are highlighting the fact that Pakistan has been behind the forces active in there, the movement of Taliban active in within Afghanistan. Of course, Americans, they've been talking about the same, that Pakistan needs to do more against them. But at the same time, they were investing on on TTP. They were investing on PLA in the past. Whatever happened in Balochistan, whatever happened in in KPK and the bordering areas. I mean, it used to be FATA. Whatever was happening in there, it was just because of unholy alliance of RAW and CIA. And I just wanted to ask that once we had each and everything with us, that we had evidences as well, why didn't somebody stop RAW in there?
Raya, first and foremost, let's separate facts from fiction. You see, there are no ground proofs that CIA and Mossad were collaborating with RAW against Pakistan. That there are no proofs, and obviously you can't find proofs of clandestine operations. That are the basics of a successful clandestine operation, that they don't leave any trace. But still, we don't find any the national interest of Israel and America converging with India when it comes to destabilizing Pakistan, because Pakistan, after all, is a nuclear state. And a nuclear power being destabilized means the security of the entire world goes topsy-turvy. So it is not in the interest, actually, really, I would say, of America to collaborate with India, or if, for that matter, Israel to collaborate with India in this manner. Yes, they do provide them technical assistance. Yes, they do have an active intelligence sharing agreement with them. But as far as their interests are concerned, they are different in different ways, different manners, because of the ground realities, because of the geostrategic realities. That is one thing. Then coming to the support of TTP and coming to the support which BLA got from India, it is a fact on ground which cannot be denied and proven once we exposed the Indian network working from Afghanistan and Iran against Pakistan. And Kulbhushan Jadhav is an international example of this entire saga, of the Indian involvement in creating fissures within Pakistan and destabilizing Pakistan, and in sponsoring terrorism inside Pakistan. Now, Indians have got this selective amnesia. When they talk about terrorism, they would love to talk about the way Pakistani groups work inside India and elsewhere, but they conveniently forget the way they are supporting insurgency and terrorism inside Balochistan, causing damage to the civilian manpower of Pakistan, the Pakistani economic interest. People are suffering because of the terrorism sponsored by India, and we don't need to prove it. In fact, the Indians have got Bramdag sitting there in India, and Bramdag Bukti is an example, as a proof rather, having political asylum sitting in India, that they are supporting terrorism inside Pakistan. Now, this is one aspect of it. Now, coming back to being honest, you see, we also got a problem inside Pakistan. We cannot be blameless. So, since we took a U-turn, backtracking a bit, since I was telling you, we took a U-turn on our Kashmir policy in 2006 under American pressures or whatever international pressures which were there. We took a U-turn and we stopped the insurgency, support to insurgency inside Kashmir under the General Pervez Musharraf government, you see there were these thousands and thousands of mercenaries, as I would like to call them, international ideological mercenaries. They went out of job. They had nothing to do. Now, these were people who were a third and fourth generation of ideological mercenaries, mujahideen, created by the USA and Pakistan together for the Cold War era to fight against the Soviets. Now they went out of job once the Cold War ended, so they were employed in Kashmir. And once we took a U-turn on Kashmir policy, they again went out of job. So somebody had to hire them. So who hired them? The Indians, of course. They hired them, and they used them against Pakistan. So we had a problem. You see, we had a problem, and the problem was conveniently used by the Indians against us. And we have now corrected our course, thankfully, and we are not going to go back on that path again. Now, having said that, if we are forced to go down that path, because if India continues with its policy, which it has started under the BJP with the Ajit Doval doctrine, so-called Ajit Doval doctrine, and they continue putting fuel to the fire in Pakistan, and they continue sponsoring terrorism inside Pakistan, Pakistan would be eventually left with no other option but to backtrack upon its policy. And you see, it is not only money which is which through which you play this game. Ideology plays a very large part in this game. And Pakistan, the ideology is on the side of Pakistan. And if Pakistan decides once again to go back and once again go back to the old ways, forced by India, I say again and again, and we start using the same ideology to support insurgency inside India. You know, Indians got a lot of fault lines. They've got like 14 fault lines in there. And Muslims are a very large majority of India, and there's huge discontent inside India. Among the Muslims of India. You know, Muslim phobia in India is a fact. The entire world knows it. So if somehow you see these mujahideen in Afghanistan decides to support the Muslims in India, where would India go? No,
Very true.
that's you see. So this has got, you know, it's not a threat, you see, but these are the stakes which India have got in Afghanistan, for which they are not going to get out of Afghanistan. And in future, they've got their policy well in place. I mean, they tried their level best to uh, back off from the Afghan this peace deal, Afghan peace process. They tried to fail it. They tried hiring. I mean, there are credible reports that Mr. Ajit Doval and RAW have hired now ISK, which is working in Afghanistan, and they are there. It is said, and through the Indian support, and the Indians sponsored it, and the Indians financed their move from Iraq and from Syria to Afghanistan, and they are still supporting them, and they are putting in money in there, thinking that they'll be somehow able to counter Taliban inside Afghanistan, but they failed. They failed drastically because Taliban has got roots inside Afghanistan, and they've got support now from the Russians, from the Chinese, from Pakistan. So this China, Pakistan, and Russia nexus is working against India and Indian interest in conjunction with Taliban. So they're putting money at the losing party anyway. But there are proofs, the Afghanistan school recent hospital bombing. It was a job of ISIK, and ISIK is being funded right now by RAW. So RAW is betting on the wrong party, and eventually they will force misery upon entire India through these policies if they don't backtrack and if they don't reconcile with Pakistan. You see, peace is the only logical way forward, and I've been always saying it. But Indians, they've got this sort of this delusion of grandiose. All right, you're 5 times bigger than us. We don't we don't contend that. We've got nothing against that. But you see, you got to act like a 5 times bigger country as well. You got to act maturely as well. You're just boasting about we are going to do this, we are going to do that. You're issuing threats on regular basis. On ground, you see Pakistan is successful in making the US sign a deal with Taliban. So you tried to stop it, it didn't work. The US have signed a deal with Taliban now, and US are pulling out the forces by the end of 2021. India has to look forward to what holds for them. Now, this is their legitimate concern in Afghanistan, that if what will happen in India through Afghanistan post 2021 when the US is pulled out from there. For this matter alone, the Indians, I think, are now sponsoring this ISIK, the raw, in fact, the clandestine operation. They're funding ISIK, and this is the wrong policy. Yes, they're also working on a diplomatic policy, which is very, very, very right approach to look at future, look at the Indian interest there by supporting the Kabul government, and we'll discuss that later, please.
Sir, we come to end of our part 1 of the program, talking about the past, and now we would be shifting ourselves towards part B, second part of the program, where we would be talking about the current situation of the clandestine missions of the Indians and of RAW in Afghanistan, as well as in western side of the Pakistan. Thank you very much, sir.